What how's it going? I'm Mark Duffy. Welcome to my channel. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the versatile Samyang 35mm to 150 f2 to f2.8. Whew. Let's get into this. So, full disclosure, Samyang have given me this lens to keep, but it has absolutely no influence in what I'm about to say. This is no baby lens. This is quite a big lens to hold. You can feed it straight away. You can see it, 82mm thread. So you're going to have to go for a little bit more expensive filters if you're getting filters for this lens. But if you're like me and you buy 82mm filters as standard to fit all of your lenses, then you're golden. This lens does not feature any internal zooming, which, you know what, that would be lovely to see if it had it, like, if it was just left at the full 150 size and just internally zoomed. I actually would kind of like that. But it is coming in at a weight of 1231 grams. So within the collection of lenses that I have, it's there. It's probably the heaviest lens that I actually own now. I can't remember the actual weight of the Sony 70-200, which I actually own myself as well. It's in and around a kilo. So there's probably about 200 grams in the difference, which, you know, you're not going to notice the difference. It's not that much of a difference really, like, you know, but the fact that it goes from 35 to 150, that's a big deal. That's a much bigger deal. I haven't been using my 70-200 because of this lens. I've been primarily using this lens in the last while. I have to say, it's a lovely lens. It's a lovely sharp lens. I really do enjoy using it. The lens features a number of switches, one being the one you know I all love is autofocus, manual focus switch. Such a simple thing to want on a lens. Then the next one is a custom switch that I think will work your focus ring. So custom 1 will let it be focused. I'm not too sure what custom 2 does. And then custom 3 will actually work your aperture. So if you're on autofocus, you don't need the focus ring. You can use the focus ring then to change your aperture, which is nice. And it does feature on other Samyang lenses as well. You also find 2 focus hold buttons ready for shooting in either landscape or portrait mode. And then there is also a lock switch for the lens so it doesn't creep. So when you're zoomed out to 35, you can lock it and then it won't creep when you're carrying and stuff like that there. In my test, I could not get the lens to sag at all. So even though it has the lock, I haven't really found it. It might move a little bit, maybe a couple of mil, but nothing too dramatic. But that's not to say over time that it wouldn't start to sag. But for the size of the lens and the focal length that it has, it's just not something that I would actually naturally gravitate to grab, you know, to use for like an overhead flat lay photo shoot. It just doesn't seem logical. The absolute weight of that lens alone, it's bad enough you have to use counterweights to do that kind of thing. Then putting such a heavy lens on, it literally doesn't make any sense to me at all. Use a lighter lens. Autofocus is fantastic. I've yet to come across a lens that doesn't have good autofocus on Sony. You kind of expect it in this day and age. Sharp lens, lovely sharp lens. Something that's typical that I found of Samyang lenses is that the contrast levels is usually a little bit lower than other lenses. That's something you can push and post anyway, you know what I mean? Like in some of these other lenses, you have to pull that back. In this case, you just have to kind of give it a wee bit of a push. And then that brings me to flaring. Couldn't really get it to flare. You know, like I'm using this in the real world. Like I'm using this for my photo shoot. So I'm not going around doing clinical tests and I have no interest. But with this lens, I never really came across it. And I've been using it extensively. I was using it for video, I was using it for photography, in the studio, edit studio, on shoot, on live events. Like I have the Samyang 50mm f1.4 Mark II. And in my test on that where I used the torch, it had bad flaring. But I've used it for so many shoots ever since and I haven't had that issue since. I was only in the testing that I did it, but in the real world, I never actually came across that problem. And that's why I kind of pull back on them kind of tests because they're not realistic at all. Use them on a shoot, and if you come across it, then label it. But on this here, no, didn't come across it at all. So this lens goes from 35 to 150, but not only that, it has a variable aperture of f2 to f2.8. So what I found was at 35mm, it was at f2. By the time you get to 50mm, it's at f2.2, and then from 80mm onwards, or around about that, it's at f2.8 to the rest of the focal range, which is really nice. Now let's get talking about its versatility. Oh my God, I love the fact that it goes from 35 to 150. Now for me, for someone who's just opened his own photography studio at the start of June, I was doing some model shoots, just portfolio stuff, and I was using this lens, and it's just fantastic to have the one lens and just, you know, be doing full body. Then you can get close-up headshot stuff and detail shots, and you're not switching lenses, and you're not trying to think, okay, hold on, we'll come back, we'll do this section of photos first, then we'll do this. No, just keep going. Just, you know, just let it flow. Oh, I want to move into this. This is what I'm feeling. And what I found is it's not even the versatility. My workflow just flew through the door. It just, you know, I got so much stuff done because I didn't have to think. I didn't have to think at all. It was just like, I want to do this. Do it. It's done. 35mm, 50mm, 70mm, 85, 135. What's 150? Oh, maybe if I back up a little bit. That's cool, lovely. Do you know what I mean? And I really like that. Like, I have an abundance of lenses to fall back on. I can easily just take a lens off and switch out, but then you have that little gap. And the flow that you and the model had, it's kind of gone now. This lens has made me consider selling my Sony 70-200. And it's not because it's a sharper lens. I think the Sony 70-200 is a better lens. It has image stabilization. The Samyang does not have image stabilization. It's probably the only flaw I found with the lens is the fact that it doesn't have image stabilization. But to put image stabilization into a lens that features f2 at 35, f2.2 at 50, and f2.8 from 80 onwards, that's a big ass. That's going to be a huge lens to include the motors for image stabilization. So I can understand why they didn't have it. If you are someone who needs that image stabilization, this is going to be a deal breaker on this lens. So yeah, I highly recommend this lens. I'm getting such use out of this lens. I'm absolutely loving it. I hope you liked this video. I hope you got something from it. If you did, give the video a like, maybe subscribe to the channel and ring that bell to get notified every time I post up a new video. You can find me on all the social medias under Mark Duffy Photography. And until the next time, later gators.